Lakers Carpool is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast as well, with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to Lakers Carpool. My name is James Brooks. I'm your host. Welcome to an at-home edition of Lakers Carpool. The Lakers played the Clippers last night, Friday night. They did not get the win. They lost 119 to 115. We're going to jump into that. We're going to have a little mailbag segment. Let's get after it. All right, well, the Lakers lose to the Clippers, as I mentioned, last night, 119 to 115. In a pretty frustrating game for Lakers fans. I mean, anytime the Lakers lose, it's going to be a frustrating situation, but losing to the Clippers in a game that's so close, that's such a winnable game, it's just really unfortunate. The Clippers coming into the game were 11-11, I believe. Lakers were 12-11, so pretty similar records. They've kind of lost to similar teams and played similarly throughout the season so far. Pretty inconsistent. That's to be expected from the Clippers as they are without Kawhi Leonard for the majority of the season this year with I think he tore his ACL. Lakers, we were expecting to be much better than they have been so far, so that's also a frustrating situation to see the Lakers losing to the Clippers in this fashion. I will say I'm at least happy that the Lakers competed in this game. We've seen a lot of times where the Lakers fall flat in the third quarter against teams and just get blown out or find themselves in a super just bad spot going into the fourth quarter. The Lakers at least played the Clippers pretty close throughout the entire game. There was a few moments where the Lakers found themselves down by like 12 points or 13 points, and they hit some threes and made some comebacks. I mean, the Lakers played really well, I would say, overall in this game, offensively at least. They shot pretty well. Anytime the Clippers hit a big shot, the Lakers were able to answer back. Looking down at the stats for the Lakers, Anthony Davis led the team. I think he led the game with 27 points, 10 rebounds on 66% shooting from the field. The one downside was Anthony Davis last night was his free throw shooting. He went 7 for 11 for a 63% free throw shooting on the night, which is pretty frustrating, especially late in the game as the Lakers were trying to make a comeback. There was two different moments, like almost back to back, where the Lakers were down. They found themselves down by like 3 points or 2 points. Sorry, the Lakers found themselves down by 2 points. Anthony Davis goes down, gets fouled, would get two free throws, could tie the game. Goes 1 for 2, makes one, misses one. So the Lakers are down 1, and then the Clippers go down and hit a 3 to go up by 4. This happened 2 different times in the fourth quarter as the Lakers were trying to mount a comeback to win the game, and the missed free throws really just killed the Lakers down the stretch in that sense. LeBron James had 23 points, 11 rebounds. He shot only 9 for 23, 39%. And I guess I should mention, LeBron James was able to play last night. I'm sure most of you guys knew that, just if you're following along with the Lakers, but he was out for health and safety protocols for testing positive for COVID. And the rule is if you can test negative twice within 24 hours, I think, or like 24 hours, taking one test negative, and then 24 hours later, test negative again, you can be cleared to play. So LeBron was able to test negative and be active for the game last night. So it was good to have LeBron in the game. I think this game looks much different without LeBron. Lakers probably losing by a little bit more, honestly. So good to have LeBron back. And honestly, at this point, the Lakers just need to keep guys healthy and keep guys in the lineup, because not having guys like LeBron and even, Avery Bradley and stuff, it's it's tough to not be playing with your full team. So LeBron came in, had 23 points, but he did not shoot well at all. He only shot 39%, like I mentioned, 9 for 23 in the game, and then awful from three, 2 for 8, 25% from three. You know, LeBron hits 2 more threes, shoots 50%, and the Lakers win the game. You know, like that's kind of what the difference in the game was. So it's one of those things where at the end of the day, I'm happy that the Lakers were at least competing to a point where if they just make one more three, if the Clippers miss one more three, the game looks much different. And so in that sense, happy to see the team competing at least, but a lot of things down the stretch where the Lakers just had some missed defensive assignments. The Clippers, I will say, hit some big shots down the stretch to put the dagger in the game. So in that sense, props to them for coming out and playing well. But there were some things that the Lakers could have done differently in order to not give up those 3-pointers and stuff. So going down so the starting lineup for this game was Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, Talen Horton-Tucker, and Dwight Howard. Yikes in terms of floor spacing, like that's just rough. LeBron and Anthony Davis are really the only 3-point shooters in that situation, in that lineup. I mean, unless you count Dwight Howard, who's shooting like 100% from three. He's like 2 for 2 or 3 for 3 or something like that. So not a great floor spacing lineup to start the game. Dwight Howard did get the start after his great performance against Sacramento a couple nights ago, which is good. You know, you want to reward the players that are playing well, that are playing defense, that are doing their assignments and following the game plans and stuff. But man, I think if anything, I would have, I would put Carmelo Anthony or Malik Monk in that starting lineup instead of Talen Horton-Tucker, especially with how Talen Horton-Tucker has been playing so far this season. He started off well, but he just has been in a rut the last few games. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds. He shot 4 for 9 and 0 for 4 from 3. So, like, the 3-pointers really killed us last night. LeBron going 2 for 8, Talen Horton-Tucker going 0 for 4. The starting lineup just not really able to get much done. And I mean, so we talk about the starting lineup, which is always interesting because you look down at the list of who played how many minutes, you know. So off the bench, Malik Monk played great last night. He got 29 minutes in the game, scored 20 points, shot 8 for 15 on the game, 4 for 8 from 3, only had 1 turnover, and played just really well. He played really well also against Sacramento a couple nights ago. So good to see Malik Monk stepping up and playing well when others are not really getting it done. Russell Westbrook last night, 10 points, only 2 rebounds. He did have 9 assists, which was good. He shot 2 for 2 from 3, so that's good. 4 for 8 from the field. He just didn't get a lot of shots up, which, you know, if you have Anthony Davis scoring 27, LeBron scoring 23, and Malik Monk putting up 20 points, like we don't really need Russell Westbrook to shoot more in that game. So I'm not necessarily upset with that performance from Russell Westbrook, as long as he's like playing defense and stuff. But he ended up, the whole starting lineup ended up with a minus of at least 5 in the plus minus category. Anthony Davis had -9, was a -9. LeBron was a -5. Westbrook -6. THT -7. Dwight Howard -11. Dwight only got 20 minutes of playing time. Carmelo got 24 minutes. Malik Monk, like I mentioned, got 29 minutes. So the starting lineup is always a funny thing, right? It's like typically you want the starting lineup to be able to be your closing lineup, but that wasn't necessarily the case with how Dwight and THT were playing last night. Like I said, the Clippers played well. So like overall, as a team, like the Lakers shot well. They shot 50% from the field, that's great. If the Lakers could shoot 50% from the field consistently, they're going to win a lot more games. They did only shoot 36% from 3, which is not, I mean, it's not the worst. It's pretty average, I would say. Not the worst. It could definitely be better. But you look at the Clippers, and they just outshot the Lakers at the end of the day. They shot 50.6% from the field, so only 0.6% better. So they were pretty even on that sense, but the Clippers shot 45.7% from the 3-point line, so almost 10% better from the 3-point line, and they win the game by 4. So that's really kind of where you're going to see the main difference in that game last night. Paul George, the Lakers held him to 19 points in 39 minutes. Like that I'll take that. He shot 7 for 20 from the field, 0 for 7 from 3. So I know Paul George, he's been sitting out the past few games. I'm not sure if he's dealing with like an injury or what it is, but Paul George didn't have a great game last night. It was really Marcus Morris that kept the Clippers above water. He had 21 points leading the team. He shot 6 for 9 from 3. He was hitting everything last night. Luke Kennard came off the bench with 19 points, shot 5 for 8 from 3. So, and a lot of those threes were in the second half. Lakers I think they were only down by 3 at halftime. In the third quarter, the Clippers just went off. They beat the Lakers in the third quarter 34-29, which the Lakers were able to at least keep up a little bit with those 20, only losing the quarter by 5 points, but the Clippers just went off in that quarter, and that's after scoring 23 points in the first quarter for the Clippers, 30 points in the second quarter, and then the second half, 34 points in the third quarter, 32 points in the fourth quarter. And looking at the fourth quarter, the Lakers played well. They won the quarter 36-32. That third quarter really just killed the Lakers again. And this was actually, like, looking at it, a pretty good third quarter for the Lakers for the most part. They just couldn't get a stop. They had in the third quarter for quite a while a lineup with LeBron at the 5, and for the Clippers, Hartenstein just killed him in that third quarter. For the game he shot 5 for 7. He had 11 points, and it mostly all came in the third quarter last night. Lakers couldn't stop him. He's a center forward for the Clippers, so he's like a bigger guy. And the small lineup for the Lakers just couldn't stop him, which is unfortunate because offensively the LeBron at the 5 lineup was looking pretty good. Like they were for the most part matching the points the Clippers were scoring, but they just couldn't get a stop and weren't able to kind of close on the lead until the fourth quarter started, and they were able to kind of like claw their way back. They were almost tied a few times, and then the Clippers just came down and hit big threes. And there was a few defensive plays where the Lakers down the stretch in the fourth quarter where the Lakers decided to double off of the shooters that were shooting well, right? So like with a minute left in the game, the Lakers double team the person that had the ball and left Luke Kennard wide open, who hit a 3 to make it like a 5-point game. It was like a 2-point game, made it a 5-point game with like 30 seconds left, and then the Lakers went down, scored again, and then Clippers went down, hit another 3 to kind of seal the game. So some risky defensive moves that just didn't work out. I don't know why you would decide to double off of the 3-point shooters that are shooting well. Seems kind of off to me. Like I'd rather in that situation just go one-on-one and see what you can do, But Lakers took the risk. They took the gamble, did not pay out, and they lose the game by 4. So Lakers find themselves at 12-12 on the season. They're currently in, let me see here. Just trying to look at the standings. So Clippers are 12-11, Lakers are 12-12. Lakers find themselves in the 7th seed in the Western Conference. Clippers are in the 6th seed. I mean, the Western Conference is still pretty wide open for the most part, aside from Golden State and Phoenix, like I mentioned in my last episode. The Lakers are, let's see, what are they? 4. They're 4 games back from Utah, who's in the 3rd seed. Which, like, again, we're still pretty early. We're 24 games into the season. There's still, a lot can still happen. So Utah at 15-7 in the third seed is still very much reachable. Memphis is 12-10 in the fourth seed. They're a game above the Lakers, so a lot can happen. Ja Morant's going to be out for quite a while for Memphis, so you can expect them, even though they beat the Thunder by 75 points a couple nights ago, you can expect them to probably drop in the rankings a little bit. The Clippers, they're inconsistent just like the Lakers, so who knows? Portland is in the 8th seed at 11-12. I think Dame is going to be out for a little while, so you can kind of expect them to drop a little bit. There's just been a lot of inconsistency, a lot of teams that just are consistently inconsistent, including the Lakers. So that bodes well for the Lakers down the stretch if they can get their stuff together, but we can't keep losing to teams like the Clippers. This was going to be a big weekend for the Lakers, playing the Clippers on Friday and then getting a good amount of rest and playing the Celtics. They play the Celtics on Tuesday, which, jumping into that, moving on to that situation, the Lakers are actually predicted to win. They're on ESPN 59.7% favorites against Boston. That's the Lakers are as healthy as they've been. Ariza is starting to practice. He's not going to be back quite yet, but he's starting to kind of shoot around and practice. No contact, but he's getting close. And then that just leaves Kendrick Nunn, and then needing to get Avery Bradley back. So the Lakers find themselves in a pretty good spot in terms of injuries, as long as they can stay healthy. And hopefully this Boston game, if they can get a win here, maybe it turns things around and the Lakers can kind of start winning some games, because up ahead you got the Celtics next on Tuesday. They play the Grizzlies, who are without Ja Morant, on Thursday. Then you get the Thunder, the Magic. Those are very winnable games. The Mavericks, who are also 11-10 on the season, that's a very winnable game. The Timberwolves, who did blow the Lakers out earlier this season, they're also 11-12, very winnable game. Play the Bulls after that on December 19th. The Bulls kicked the Lakers' butts earlier. Hard to say how the Lakers would do in that. It's any game for the Lakers is a winnable game, which makes the season so frustrating, I think. And then we play the Suns, who are really good so far. So don't expect much from that game. And closing out the rest of the year, it's Spurs, a winnable game. Nets, they're 16-6. They've kind of turned things around. They're doing pretty well. Rockets, very winnable game. Grizzlies, again, winnable. Trailblazers, again, winnable. So down the stretch, the Lakers, honestly, down the stretch of the rest of the month, there's only 3 games that the Lakers should probably lose based on how they've been playing. So so they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They have 13 more games for the rest of the month, and they should go 10-3 for the rest of the month. That's the standard that we need to hold the Lakers to. And that's very realistic. I mean, again, the teams that the Lakers are playing, like the Grizzlies and the Mavericks and the Timberwolves, they all have this similar record to the Lakers. So in that sense, it's kind of a toss up, right? The Lakers could very well not win those games. You look at the Lakers Grizzlies matchup predictor for the Thursday game, and the Lakers are favorites by just a percent. They're favorites by 1% on the ESPN app. So those that is a toss up, but again, very winnable games. Those are games that the Lakers should not. When you have a team of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, plus the other guys that they have, if Malik Monk keeps playing well, Carmelo Anthony, those are teams that the Lakers should not be losing to. So I'm feeling hopeful for the Lakers. I mean, it's unfortunate that they lost to the Clippers last night. I'm at least happy with how the offense looked. I'm happy that the Lakers fought. I'm happy that it was a competitive game and the Lakers did not get blown out, even with how well the Clippers played in the third quarter. It could have easily gotten out of hand, and it didn't. So I do feel good about that. But again, you never feel good losing to the Clippers. All right, let's move into our mailbag segment. So we got a few questions in, so I'm excited to take a look and answer those. So let's see. The first question we have comes in from Tyler, and he asks, when will Westbrook grow a pair and win a ring? Well, hopefully this season. I think that, I've been pretty hard on Russell Westbrook this season and throughout his career. I think that it would be, it's always good when you have superstars in the NBA winning in general. It was cool to see Giannis win last year. So, you love to see LeBron win, Kobe when he was winning, Tim Duncan. Like, you want the players that are good and popular to win rings. And Russell Westbrook is kind of past his prime a little bit, not at the height of his superstardom, but it'd be cool for him to win a ring. Same thing with, like, Carmelo, right? It's like, it would be a nice, like, cherry on top to a good career, So let's hope this year, maybe next season, if we can't get it done this season. Next question is from Jackson. He says, when do you become Nuggets carpool? Well, if things go really, really sour for me and the Lakers, maybe I'll, jump to the Nuggets bandwagon. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think that would ever happen. So sorry for that one. Don't think we'll become a Nuggets carpool here, but maybe you can, maybe we can do a little collab and you can do a Nuggets carpool and we can kind of work together on that. How about that? All right, what do we have? What else do we have? Next question is from Chris B. He says, how do you think the LeBron era will be remembered 10 plus years after it's done? That's a good question. Hopefully with fond memories. That's my hope. I mean, I know, like, whenever I've talked about the LeBron era and people that are that were kind of feeling negative about LeBron coming to the Lakers, my thought process was, if the Lakers will even win one ring, it'll be worth it. So I know for myself, like, there's certain things that are frustrating. Like, even after, like, the 2019 season, there wasn't much to be expected from the Lakers. I didn't really expect that the Lakers would win a ring that season, and then LeBron was hurt for the majority of the year, and it just didn't happen. The next season, the Lakers got Anthony Davis, they won the ring, and we were all happy. And then last season, right, like, the Lakers were hoping to repeat. There was injuries and some teammate issues, and things just didn't work out, and that was a bummer. This season, things are looking almost even worse, which is so far been pretty frustrating. So, like, if this trend continues where the Lakers are just disappointing year after year, even though they've won the ring, I think it'll be looked back at like, not the worst, but not the best. Also, I guess, like, I think for me, like, winning the ring, makes the experiment worth it, in my opinion. But I don't know if if that's the only one that the Lakers win with LeBron. I don't know if that'll be, if it'll be looked at with the fondest of memories in the same way that we look at, like, Kobe's repeat, like the Kobe, like 2008, 2009, 2010 championship run, right? Like, I don't, even though they lost in 08 because they won in 09 and 2010, you look back at that with, like, fond memories. With this 3-year span so far with the Lakers, you look back at it and, like, it's been fun. The Lakers have competed. It's fun that the Lakers have been one of the best teams in the league, for at least the last 2 seasons. So it's hard to say. I mean, and I think if you look back, like, if in 10 plus years from now, if the Lakers are, find themselves in a decimated place because by that time LeBron's gone, Anthony Davis is probably past his prime or not here anymore. And we didn't have draft picks and stuff, and we find ourselves in a similar position to where we were in, like, 2016, 2017, like, maybe it's more disappointing because it's like, well, we only won one ring and now we're in a bad spot. Maybe that's how it is. It's hard to say, but I think as I am right now, I feel fond about this era of the Lakers with LeBron, but it would be nice to get at least one more ring. All right. And the last question we got here is from Actually, we might have more. But we have another one from another Chris K. He says, which former Laker draft pick do you miss the most? Randall, Ingram, or Lonzo? I think I would have to go with Lonzo on that one, mostly because of what I think he could bring to the table for the Lakers right now. I think LeBron, right now, the Lakers guard play is a little bit weak. Just with, the fact that Avery Bradley has been a starter for the majority of the season so far kind of shows that, right? Like, he's been playing well for who he is, but having a guy like Lonzo, especially now that Lonzo has seemed to fix his shot, like his shot is much more consistent. Just his IQ, his passing ability, and now scoring ability is hopefully he continues to be successful for his sake and everything. But I think I miss Lonzo the most. I think also part of it is because we didn't get to see too much of Lonzo with the Lakers before we traded him to get Anthony Davis. I not to say that I regret the trade in the least bit. I would do that trade 10 times out of 10 to get Anthony Davis. But if I could have one of them back, I would go with Lonzo. Let's see if there's anything else really quickly. I think that might have been it. But I did get a question. I don't think I answered this in my last episode from Corey. He says, would a new coach help or hurt our current situation? Frank came in and helped us get to being one of the best defenses over the past 2 years, and now we can't seem to stop anybody. Do we not have the personnel to run a good defense, or are we just not using the right players? I've talked about this a little bit so far with Frank Vogel. Up until this point, I don't think firing him would really help much. I appreciate that he's a defensive-minded coach. I appreciate what he was able to do the past 2 seasons and make us one of the best defensive teams in the league. I think he's struggling with his personnel right now. I think it's more of a personnel problem than a coaching problem. That being said, it's up to the coach to find the right balance and the right scheme for the players that he has. And so I think that is why there's been a struggle, right? Like, of course, we wanted this team to be a plug-and-play situation where they're just good right off the bat. But in retrospect, that maybe was too high of an expectation for this team. Being so brand new, having guys that are just, they're veteran players, they're older, there's a lot of nuances with this team. So I think it is more of a personnel problem than a coaching problem. But that being said, I think it's a two-way street, right? I think it's up to the coach to find the right scheme, find the right strategies, use the players to their strengths, as opposed to having players trying to fit within a scheme that might not be what their strengths are. But I agree. It's definitely been frustrating that we can't seem to stop anybody. And again, like I mentioned before, like there's no excuse for bad defense if you're an NBA player. I think that I understand that there's certain body types and physicalities and athleticisms that make it easier to be a good defender, but it's like at the end of the day, like you got to do your job. Like basketball is not just an offensive game, right? Like you have to play defense also, and if you're not going to play defense, then if you're not going to be able to fit within the scheme, if you're not going to be able to do what the coach wants you to do or what the team needs you to do, then you shouldn't be on the court. And that goes for everybody, right? It's like no matter who you are, like you should be able to play some level of good defense, or at least like something like that, right? So I don't know. I think the Lakers, a lot of people after this loss to the Clippers are out for Frank Vogel's head again. They're saying that we have a long break until the Tuesday game against the Celtics. Like if there's any time to do it, now would be the time. So we'll see what happens. It's hard to say. It's one of those things where it's like I would love to give the Lakers a little more time to get things right, but it's been 24 games. We know the team. We know who we have, and they haven't been able to get anything done consistently, which is frustrating. So I don't know. Again, I think a new coach could help. It could hurt. At this point, I feel like it hurts more than it helps. But That being said, I'm assuming a new coach right at this point like would be an interim coach that's already an assistant coach. I mentioned this I think 2 episodes ago or so. It'd probably be Phil Handy. He'd probably come in as like the interim head coach, and because he's already been a coach and he knows the team and what's been going on. It probably wouldn't hurt that much, but obviously whatever the Lakers do has to get signed off by LeBron, right? So, and overall, I like LeBron is a smart business guy. He's a smart basketball guy. He has one of the best basketball IQs of all time, So I trust that LeBron will try and steer the Lakers in the right decision to make the right decision if the Lakers do decide to move off of Frank Vogel. But it's tough. Like he like Corey mentioned in this, he coached up the Lakers and gave them certain schemes and strategies to be one of the best defenses the last 2 years. So I think we can get there. It's just a matter of getting the players to buy in. I think overall it's been a personnel problem in the sense that we have been injured and we've had players that are not giving their full effort out there. And I mentioned this in the last episode, but Anthony Davis basically admitted the fact that the Lakers as a team have not been giving out full effort because he was like, all we have to do is go on a 10-game win streak, right? It's like, yeah, that would be great. We have to want it. Like, yeah, okay. Like, want it then, They've been playing like they don't want it. Based on those comments by Anthony Davis. And I don't think he says that for no reason, So I think the Lakers need to give their full effort. They need to want it, but they also need to be healthy. And maybe that means moving off of some players. Maybe that means adjusting some other things. But I think it's more of a personnel problem than a coach problem at this moment. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Lakers Carpool. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and share it on social media with your friends. You can find the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or most places where you listen to podcasts. Again, thank you so much for listening, and go Lakers.